They are exceptionally flavorful though, and the tree has like a really short internodal distance, so it's like the distance between the leaves and the fruits is sort of compact, so it grows in this smaller form and just has tons of fruit throughout.
This episode of Voices from the Field was produced in partnership with ATTRA and the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program. To learn more about SARE's library of practical information and available grants to fund projects that advance sustainable agriculture, visit SARE.org. In this episode, NCAT Sustainable Horticulture Specialist Guy Ames talks with Weston Lombard, who grows mulberries on his Millfield, Ohio farm, and in 2016 was a SARE Farmer Rancher grant recipient on the topic, Field Testing the Mulberry for Commercial Production in the Midwest. Guy and Weston talk about the commercial possibilities and challenges mulberries present, along with different cultivars and growing strategies. Let's listen.
I'm Guy Ames. I'm a horticulture specialist with the National Center for Appropriate Technology. I usually work with the ATTRA project, which is a National Sustainable Agriculture Information Service. And today, this podcast, I'm here with Weston Lombard, who has become quite the mulberry specialist. I've been very impressed looking at your work, Weston.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think I could give a short introduction for you, but I'm just so impressed with your knowledge of mulberries. I think I better let you flesh out anything else you'd like to say about yourself.
Excellent. So I'm Weston Lombard. I'm the owner of Solid Ground Farm in Southeast Ohio. We run sort of a sustainable education and event center. The farm's sort of a land lab and teaching center for a place-based elementary school that we run from the property, and outdoor adventure summer camp. We also host like community college courses in agroecology, and my passion has been in agroforestry for the past 15 years and have just devoted myself to trying to figure out tree crops for humid Southeast Ohio.
Very nice. Well, I see we've been moved by some of the same authors. Of course, J. Russell Smith, The Tree Crops, which is really the foundation for permaculture, though a lot of permaculturists don't know that. But apparently you do.
Really what got me into all of this. And
that and Lee Reich, The Uncommon Fruits Worthy of Attention. And that was just about everything I knew about mulberries until recently when I started looking up your work. So I think I should tell the audience first that much of what we're going to talk about today, Weston has a pretty good presence on the web. I found you all over YouTube, but I don't see any way around just talking about mulberries, because some of the people listening to this podcast will know and some won't. But I thought I knew something about mulberries until I started looking at your YouTube videos, and I realized that my information is pretty shallow. So one of the things that I was just astonished by were the leaves, the edibility of the leaves and the nutritional quality of the leaves. There's no way around just geeking out on mulberries because it's such an incredible plant. So say something about the leaves. I don't think a lot of people know about that.
Absolutely. So the Morus alba species, that's the Asian white mulberry. It's been cultivated for thousands of years as the feed source for silkworms. So silkworms have like complex nutritional needs and a single stomach like we do. So these leaves have been bred to be highly digestible. And they contain a wealth of nutrients and beneficial compounds. They're really being explored now as a livestock feed for all manner of creature, chickens, sheep, goats, pigs, can all. I think everyone would enjoy mulberry leaves. And then they're used as a traditional Chinese medicine as a tea as well. The leaves are dried, and it helps regulate blood sugar and has health benefits as well. So I've been drying the leaves, and I do like a mulberry and stinging nettle blend that I have every day.
Huh. So, and of course, it would be good human food too, right? It's very edible. I mean, besides the tea, can you make something with just the leaf, like greens?
Yeah, so the young leaves particularly are tender. They become, like all leaves, they become rougher and tougher as they age through the
Right.
season. But the young leaves, a few weeks after they've emerged, they can be chopped and sautéed. The larger leaves can be used like a grape leaf and like made like with a dolma, like wrapped around different
Huh.
dishes. And yeah, just any way you use a pot herb, you can substitute mulberry leaves.
And 17% protein, I saw.
Yeah, they're incredible.
Yeah.
That's what makes them such a high value feed for livestock and for people.
Right. And the other thing I was really amazed about that I didn't know was the ability of the tree to bounce back. I mean, you can whack on it and pollard it and coppice it, and it just keeps putting out more vegetative matter.
Absolutely. So that's one strategy for harvesting leaves is, when the leaves get too tough later in the summer, you can strip the tree of all the leaves, and then it'll regrow quickly, resprout new leaves. And in like more tropical areas where this is a common practice, they can get up to 5 crops a season if they're irrigating and fertilizing. But in Ohio and temperate climate, you could probably do that 2 or 3 times without damaging the tree.
Wow. 2, 3 times a year.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. That's really amazing. So it's clear that you know a lot about this. And I've seen that you grow other things too, of course, agroforestry and all. Do you have a formal education in horticulture? Because you're clearly well versed in this.
I don't. I didn't grow up farming either. I studied business administration in college, and then sort of got inspired to just learn to grow my own food and try to take care of my family. And my wife and I bought a farm, and I've been just trying to figure this out ever since. So avid
Fantastic.
and practitioner.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, that's the best teacher experience. So, and you're near probably the closest big town that people know is Athens, Ohio.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're in Ames County, home of Ohio University.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so let's move on to the fruit, just because I'm mostly because I'm a great lover of the fruit, but there'll be a lot of people that know something of the fruit, if not just the nursery rhyme around the mulberry bush. I've only grown Illinois everbearing, and of course, it's a very good mulberry, and I've been astonished at the kind of crops we get off of that. But you really opened my eyes to a lot of different ones, including what's this one? Silk, what was it? Say
Yeah,
it again.
it's called Silk Hope. It's named after the town in North Carolina where it was discovered.
Okay. And that's because that town used to be a place where they grew the white mulberry for silkworm production, correct?
I believe that's the case.
Probably.
I was informed of the fruit by A.J. Bullard. He's
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately passed. He's a former head of NAFEX, the North American Fruit Explorers, and
Yeah.
he was the authority on mulberry. Did a lot of research at his farm and has extensive plantings. But he identified Silk Hope as what he thought was the best cultivar out there, and so I got it from him.
Do you think it's pure Alba?
No, it appears to be a hybrid of the Morse alba and the Morse rubra, just like Illinois everbearing.
How is that determined? That it's got both genetics, that it's a cross. Do you know?
Well, you can do genetic testing, but also people look at the characteristics of the fruit and the leaves, and it's a little harder to determine. But once you get familiar with the different textures of the leaves, identifying hybrids can
Okay.
become easier.
All right. So maybe we should tell our listening audience there's more than 3 species, but the ones that we're going to talk about today at all are just what, red, white, and black, right? Morris
Yeah.
alba, rubra, and nigra.
Yes, and particularly red and white. So the Morris rubra, the red mulberry, is the native North American mulberry. It's often found in like forest coves and is in deep woods. It tolerates shade and gets quite large. These trees can get up to 70 feet tall and is just a spectacularly flavored fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful taste. However, they're typically not quite as productive as the alba. They bear fruits singly, so from each, like, where a leaf comes off of a branch, a fruit comes from that junction at each leaf node.
Oh, okay.
It's just a single fruit though. And with the Morris alba and the hybrids, you can have like 3 or 4 fruits coming out of that same node. So you
Yeah.
often, with the alba, you get a lot more fruit.
So for the uninitiated listener, I think you would be astonished at the kind of productivity we're talking about. The Illinois everbearing is the only one, again, that I'm familiar with, but I've heard some facts and figures about Hicks, I think was the one. But anyway, let's just say a mature Illinois everbearing. Have you got any kind of estimate of what the production potential is in pounds?
It's really hard to quantify. People have said 10 bushels, which is a lot of mulberries. The problem is, I bet I only ever realize 10% of the crop, and the birds and the critters get the rest of it.
Are you okay with that?
I have so many mulberries that I'm more than okay with that.
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really an amazing tree that I feel like it can grow, have more mulberries than I can possibly pick and put up. I haven't even thought about selling them yet, but and yet I don't ever worry about the critters taking their share too. There's just so much production. It's just really phenomenal. And you add that into what I've learned from you about the foliage and its use as a livestock crop or human food. Boy, we're just talking about one of the most productive trees in the world. I'm going to give you a chance here to hold forth on on this king of the fruits. You want to say something about that? Because I'm newly amazed at the potential for this fruit to feed people and animals.
Yeah, so J. Russell Smith referred to it as the king of the crops as far as tree crops grow. And that's, for the reasons you've listed. It is incredibly productive of fruit and leaves. It's typically an annual bearing tree, whereas some trees will alternate years or are susceptible to late frosts. Mulberry, Morris actually means late, and it's a little bit later to flower than many things, so it can sometimes avoid the late spring frosts. The weather's gotten so sporadic here recently that it's had some trouble even.
Wow.
However, it puts out secondary crop fruit, unlike most trees. So with an apple, if the blossoms get frozen, then it's just done and there's no apples that year.
Right.
But like how I said, when you strip the leaves off a mulberry, it'll actually grow new leaves and new fruit as well.
Even in the summertime or something, it would do that?
In the summertime, it does it more if you if you cut back, you strip the leaves and you cut the tree back, and then the new growth that comes off of those cuts will put out fruit as well.
Wow. Yeah.
But in the spring, if it gets frosted, the fruit will fall off, and then it will produce a secondary crop that's smaller than the first one. And then it'll even put on a tertiary crop if those get frozen. So it just keeps moving, but with less and less fruit each time.
Huh. Well, it's still phenomenal producer. And we haven't even begun to talk about the flavor. Everybody that comes to my farm during the time of year when Illinois everbearing is bearing, And this year it was all the way almost to September because we had relatively well-spaced rains and such. They're just amazed. Why don't people know about this? So maybe we're getting to the commercial and marketing things. Why don't people know about this?
Sure. Mainly, I believe it's because of the short shelf life. So mulberry
Yeah,
is a very soft fruit. It it only keeps for a few days refrigerated. You couldn't ship it. So you really the best way to get it is right off the tree.
yeah,
Um, and you got to get it before the birds do and the children. One other possible explanation is it's sort of thought of as a messy tree. Like
yeah,
one, it produces so much fruit that it can stain the ground around it.
yeah.
Two, the birds gorge themselves and then poop everywhere. So people
True.
who have them in their yards like will end up with a purple sidewalk, and you sort of think of it as a weed instead of an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I love them, and everybody that tastes them love them. I will say this though, when I discovered Illinois, I didn't discover Illinois everbearing, as you know. When I personally had my first one, I was already a mulberry lover. But the truth is that the red mulberry, Morus rubra, after I eat a few handfuls, which are delectable, they're kind of insipid. It's just sweet, which is nothing wrong with that. But I was then astonished to realize how much more complex flavors could be with Illinois everbearing, and I haven't begun to explore now that I know about these other ones that you've uh, made me aware of. I think,
Absolutely. So, yeah, that's one critique often of Morris Alba. People think of it as insipid or sort of just bland and sweet.
yeah,
Um, the rubra though and the hybrids are often much more complex and can have like tangy notes and just really complex flavors that are among the best tasting fruits I've had.
they really are. I grow almost everything here that I can grow, fruiting wise, persimmons and pears, Asian pears, apples. If I can grow it organically in the Ozarks of Arkansas, I grow it. And when those things are on, when the Illinois everbearing fruits are on, it's an easy place to start for anybody that comes to my place for fruit exploring, because it's a universal pleaser. It really is a great, great tree. Girardi, I'm really intrigued by the dwarf mulberry because the Illinois everbearing and the Morris rubra, the wild ones, of course, are huge trees. And I just never had the Girardi. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, so
Am I
it's one
saying it right?
yeah, Girardi dwarf. It's one that I really want to make work on my farm. However, it's not quite as cold hardy as some of the others.
Oh,
So when we have real cold snaps, especially the young ones, will die. Often they'll regrow from the roots if you've planted a cutting. But I've had a lot of trouble getting them started, unfortunately. They are exceptionally flavorful though, and the tree has like a really short internodal distance, so it's like
hmm,
the distance between the leaves and the fruits is sort of compact, so it grows in this smaller form and just has tons of fruit throughout.
huh.
Um, if one can grow it, I'd say definitely zone 6 and higher. It's worth planting and is probably one of the best bets commercially. Um, However, I'm just theorizing because my experience with it is pretty limited.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move. You gave me a little segue there back into commercial production. So I saw that you had some pretty interesting approaches to on-farm marketing because you've already established that selling fresh fruit off-farm is going to be really difficult, if not impossible, just because of the tenderness of the fruit. So one of the things I saw on one of your videos, was making a mulberry tunnel. Would you describe that? That looked really beautiful.
Yeah, so I got that idea from some Thai growers who are doing it commercially, and they train trees on either side of a pathway to connect in the middle, and then you can walk through, and the fruit hangs down, and you can pick from either side
Wow.
as you go. So yeah, I haven't fully replicated that yet, but I think for like a U pick or just an aesthetic point of interest on the farm, it's a wonderful
Wow.
idea.
Yeah. So you said Thailand, so they're growing Niagara, I guess.
They grow. I think a number of things, a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
different albas. So the alba originated in Asia, as did the Niagara, I guess. But alba's by far the more popular.
Okay. Huh.
Um,
So that would be a way to kind of dwarf the tree too, if you can tie it down in this tunnel shape.
it would, if you get the growth going horizontally, it it slows it down a little bit. However, it'll put out a lot of suckers every year that require, constant pruning. Um,
Okay.
but a mulberry, unlike other fruit trees, you can really hack it back each year, and it won't uh, impact the health or vigor of the tree much.
Wow.
So continuous pruning is maybe the only way to keep the trees really small.
Yeah.
People recommend you cut about half of the new growth back each year.
All right. Huh. Well, sticking with the marketing then, uh, I really was intrigued with it, so the on-farm thing. So you do classes there, and I guess you're including it in on-farm meals, or are you trying to do sales when you bring groups to your farm?
Yeah, so we give tours, and then we often have a farm stand available afterwards, and we sell fruit and veggies and have a little tree nursery. So my best sales are actually often of mulberry trees. People walk through and they pick
Okay.
fruit, and then I'm like, you could have this at your place, and they eat them up. And so I sell a lot of trees directly from the farm,
Huh.
and we do value added products as well.
Don't have time to stay up to date on the freshest sustainable agriculture news, events, and funding opportunities? You can trust NCAT to keep you connected with our weekly harvest e-newsletter. Subscribe today at ncat.org and get your weekly harvest delivered each Wednesday.
So how's the dried thing going? The dried mulberries?
The dried mulberries, I think, are a viable option. They're becoming very popular, like marketed as a superfood at the health food stores. I think most of the mulberries are white mulberries coming in from like Turkey, interestingly.
Yeah.
And I've dehydrated a bunch of the red mulberries and the hybrids, and the color maybe isn't. They brown a little bit, and I don't know that they're unappealing looking, but the ones I've seen in the supermarket are somehow they're doing something better over in Turkey that I haven't.
Well, I've
Um,
bought some before in a health food store, and they tasted like gummy bear, gummy candy,
yeah, they're delicious and
marvelous.
wonderful. So I do think that's viable. I just haven't quite cracked that nut. The dehydrators that I've used weren't. I haven't had access to a big enough facility. I rented space in a local processing unit, but they had a pretty small dehydrator, and so it would really have to be scaled to be profitable.
Yeah. What about frozen pulp? Any possibility there? I know Christian Mill does the pawpaws near you.
I think that's the best way to go with mulberries, is either just whole frozen berries,
Uh-huh.
um, or yeah, there's no really reason why you pulp it in advance, I don't think, but yeah, that it could be pulped and frozen as well.
Yeah.
And then preserved indefinitely,
Oh,
and
yeah, duh.
just endless amounts of uses.
And wine?
Absolutely wine. Yeah, and yeah. Speaking of wine, the one of the innovative ways I've seen mulberry grown is on grape trellises. There's
Huh.
a farmer in Australia who he's got a vineyard, and he replaced several of the rows of grapes with mulberries, and trains them similar to how he trains his grapes, and then harvests them with a grape harvester.
Oh my gosh.
And so it damages the berries enough that they need to then be used as a pulp or for winemaking.
Yeah. This is just out of the blue for you if you want, and you can say no, but just agroforestry in general. It seems like you've been inspired by some of the works I have been, the tree crops book and others. Um, so, I look at native plants like the red mulberry, and of course, the white has certainly uh, set up shop here in North America just fine. But I remember seeing something from Wendellberry and West Jackson that right now that something like 90% of our food are from annual crops and 10% maybe from tree crops. And to me, that seems like a stretch. I don't think it's even that much, but they say we need to reverse that. And I've got a feeling that you probably have something to say about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to demonstrate on our farm, is just that, we can create these productive food systems that are both ecologically beneficial and economically viable. So yeah, mixing tree crops with livestock, or mixing it with annual production through alley cropping, I think has a lot of potential. And it does require, both this shift in like growing practices and farming culture, but it also requires a shift in, culinary culture and our eating habits. So,
Mm-hmm.
no one knows what to do with mulberries or persimmons or
Yep.
black walnuts or chestnuts or hazelnuts, but all these crops, could form the basis of a food system. And traditionally in this area, like, indigenous people subsisted on these foods. So there is, a model for this that exists. It's just very foreign to us.
Yeah. Right. Well, we can always run them through a hog.
That's true.
And I
Hogs and
remember, I remember just vaguely a point that J. Russell Smith made in the book Tree Crops, that you could put more weight on a hog with mulberries than you could with corn. You had any experience?
We did graze. We did pasture raised hogs here, and we'd rotate them through our orchards and agroforestry systems. And yeah, it's quite productive. Corn and soy, like, I think the conversion rate is higher. Like, you need, I think 5 times more like volume of like leafy matter and fruits to put on the same amount of weight as corn and soy. But per acre, mulberries can produce a lot more
That's what it was.
than corn. So he talks about, the pigs just hanging out under the mulberry tree all day, waiting for the fruit to fall. And I absolutely find that to be the case.
Yeah.
They'll pick up everything, and then I'd come through and strip the leaves and throw them for the pigs as well, and they'd eat the leaves. I also do like a cut and carry fodder for the sheep, where I'll cut summer growth of mulberry and take it over to the sheep, and they'll eat the bark off they'll eat the leaves, they'll strip the bark off the branches, they'll eat the twigs.
Wow.
And just really enjoy it. It can also be dried and used for winter feeding as well.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. What a tree. I only knew a fraction of all this, and I've been promoting Illinois everbearing for a long time. Well, there's a couple more things I want to run past you. One of the things I really like about mulberries is that I can wholeheartedly promote them for community orchards and along greenways and stuff. And I've been able to sell some trees to the Greenway around Northwest Arkansas, and one in St. Louis too. And the reason for that they work so well, especially compared to other fruit trees, is that they don't need hardly any maintenance. They're not heavy feeders. They compete against all kinds of weeds that don't seem to care at all. And what else? Even drought tolerant, really. What's been your experience? So you said you're selling trees now.
Yeah, so I think once you get them started, so they do need a little care when you first plant them, but once they're established, they can be hard to get rid of. So that's one of the great characteristics. Really low maintenance. They don't require pruning, and they'll be super productive without it. They can even fruit, like, the internal part of the tree that's shaded by the rest of the tree. It still produces heavy fruit.
Yeah.
They're in partial shade, they'll still be productive. So yeah, they can really be let go. It does help to prune them for access and just keeping them the size you want them and all that. But yeah, and then pest and disease wise, it's not necessarily that they don't get pests or diseases.
Mm-hmm.
They're so vigorous that they just fight through it. And so, one limb might die and another one sprouts and takes its place.
Yeah. Wow. I love it.
Birds might eat half the crop, but there's still enough to go around. So yeah, it's probably the most low maintenance tree I found, which is its main appeal to me. That's why I was like, okay, this is what we have to do. If we're gonna try to grow fruit without pesticides and chemicals, mulberry is part of the solution.
Nice. So I talked a little bit about Girardi, a little about Illinois everbearing. What other named cultivars are you really excited about? Oh, it's
Yeah,
Silk Hope, of course.
Silk Hope, yep.
Yeah.
So those are the main ones I found on like initial searches at nurseries and online. But as soon as I got like a little deeper, I just found that there are hundreds of named cultivars out there.
Wow.
And I have no idea. So I've tried most of the ones that will grow in zone 5 or 6 where I am, and had people come do taste tests. And there's different flavors and different sizes, and different berries are good for different uses. But overall, like hands down from all the taste tests I've done, this mulberry we found that we're calling Kip Parker, after the man that he dug up a tree from his farm and gave it to me when I was sort of doing this outreach project to find new cultivars. And I think it's just a wild tree. It's a Alba rubra cross, and it is just amazing. It's just super intense flavor, really sweet with this nice tang, and it's like much more complex than the others, and just everyone loves it. Like, yeah,
Wow. So
explosion.
are you selling trees of that
So
or
I'm selling
sign wood?
them, and I've been sharing cuttings with people who reach out to me. Buzz Ferver at Perfect Circle Farm, he does a mail order nursery, and he sells Kip Parker. So yeah, that's my favorite tree so far. It does have sort of an upright growth habit that makes it sort of tend to like send branches growing vertically that make them harder to reach. So it requires some training or pruning to make it the perfect shaped tree. But as far as flavor and production, it's a really heavy bearer. The fruit are big and long. So all the other characteristics are just phenomenal. So typically when I'm grafting new trees, that's what I'm putting on top of them. But there are others that are great. I think the biggest fruits I've gotten, I'm blanking. Oh, Oscars is a that's supposed to be another hybrid. It has these big plump berries that are well larger than almost anything else I'm growing. And that's been fun. People love that, and it's just makes picking much more satisfying when you can fill a dish with 5 berries or something.
Wow.
So I'm doing a lot of Oscars, and then yeah, both Silk Hope and Illinois Everbearing, they're pretty similar. Kip Parker is likened to those two as well. And then Carmen is one I got out of a nursery in Canada. It has these nice big white berries. So
And I guess
it's
it's cold hardier
cold
too.
hardy, a good potential for dehydrating. Can be insipid, especially if it's a really wet year. Mulberries tend to plump up with a lot of water and have sort of concentrated sugars. So Carmen can do that and be a sort of a boring flavor sometimes, but it's big and it's productive.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add that I haven't asked?
Um,
I'll tell everybody you've got a big presence on YouTube. You're easy to find and some really good information.
oh, good.
We'll also put, for the listeners, we will put links to anybody that dials this up, on your device. There'll be links to you and your publications and videos and such. You do have a publication, right? A
I
book or?
project. I put together a pamphlet. It's called Sustainable Solutions for Appalachia, and it's about mulberry agroforestry.
I've got it right here in front of me.
Yeah, and it's I think most of the information there is very good. It's since writing that, I should probably go back and do a second edition and update a few things. I think a few of the cultivars I mentioned ended up not being quite as cold hardy as I had thought they were after a few more cold winters.
Mm-hmm. Is this publication free? I see it was done as part of your SARE, the SARE project.
Yeah, you can find it through the SARE website, and I also have it on my website, and it's free to download. It's
Very
just
nice.
a PDF.
Well, Weston, I guess I'm going to call it an end here, unless you have something else you want to add.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
I do encourage people, if you're interested in growing fruit of any sort, you should add a mulberry to the to the planting. They're extremely worthwhile.
I'm going to tack on to that, and because I give a lot of talks through ATTRA and NCAT here, and a lot of those participants want to know how they can make money with these fruit trees. And so often, it's not this particular, maybe it's a persimmon or maybe it's a mulberry. It doesn't immediately or easily lend itself to marketing or commercial applications, but everybody should have some of these trees on their homestead.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Weston, thanks so much. I hope I get to meet you in person someday.
Me too. Thank you
All right.
again.
Take care.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at attra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Rich Myers. ATTRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATTRA Sustainable Agriculture Program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.